Happy Friday, you guys. We made it to the end of the week. I know it may not feel like that during these COVID-19 times, but yes, it is Friday, and it is time for a Waking Giants Lunch and Learn. So, just going to take care of a few housekeeping things before we get started. One of those housekeeping things are Waking Giants, what are we? We're a social impact company. We give people the tools to fight the good fight. Some of those tools are lunch and learns with amazing people like this. We've had lunch and learns with the now elected district attorney, Jose Garza, the now elected county attorney, Delia Garza, and the now elected District 14 state senator, Sarah Eckhart. So that gives you an idea of kind of what we do, but we also provide gun control kits and immigration kits and all these wonderful toolkits to help you have conversations, whether at your job, your place of education, employment, or your family around these issues. We also have some pretty sweet swag and t-shirts and bandanas and all kinds of good stuff. So check us out on our website, wakinggiants.me. We also do anti-racism training. So we kind of cover the whole spectrum. Please do us a huge favor. This is a lunch and learn. We're all adults here. I do have the executive function to mute you or remove you if you are not dressed appropriately. Yes, we are recording. I don't know how everybody lunches, but it is Friday and some people may have decided that pants are optional. So if they would get up to go to the bathroom or something, we wouldn't want you to be embarrassed. So please, please, please be dressed appropriately. Please have your mics muted. We will have a Q&A, so you can unmute your mic at that time. And also use the chat box. I sent you guys a chat function, a chat message, sorry, using the chat function while you were in the waiting room. You are more than welcome. I just dropped you another message there. I'll be dropping links to like our event calendar and all kinds of goodies. So, or anything they mentioned in their conversation that might have a website, I'm pretty good at drawing those up really quick. So without further ado, Martha, co-founder, in this box next to me, please, boss, take it away.
Hi, I'm so excited you guys are here for this conversation. I get to talk to two women that I admire who have built a business that I've gotten to watch grow for the last, I feel like since it started, 5 years. Wow. Jonnyka and Veronica, high school friends, that have started and brought to the world a fair trade, block printed, hand loomed fashion brand that makes the most beautiful textiles I have literally ever seen. And they've done it with so much intention and care and love that I am so excited to get to hear from them about their journey and how they think about building this business and what it has meant. So I'm pleased to introduce Jonnyka and Veronica.
Jonnyka, do you want to start since you're in Austin, Texas?
Yes, I will start, yes. So thank you everyone for being here and joining us for this conversation. And please, like Roz mentioned, throw questions into the chat. We'll be happy to make this super interactive and as super live as possible. And we, of course, have a myriad of topics to talk about under this. Building an ethical brand encompasses many things, right? It's the approach, the relationships, the economics of it all, what's happening in the current landscape. I was taking notes to prepare for this, and my notes just spanned a super wide scope of topics that we can talk about. But I guess we'll start at the beginning just to expand a little bit on how Martha introduced us. But we are childhood best friends, and we actually super bonded over art and writing and kind of all things creative. Even at our very young ages of 14, 15, we were super in tune to creativity and art, expression, the study of, Veronica's an art historian. I'm a painter. So that has always like been like a strong part of our friendship, but also just of our personal lives. And we started the biz, like fast forward, right, to recent history. We started the biz 5 years ago. We were invited by another brand who was working in block printing to design a line of handbags, block printed handbags in India. And while we were there in India working on the production, the sample production of these, we designed a mini line of 5 scarves. So our whole business began with these 5 block printed scarves. And that's what started. We just did a mini production of these 5 pieces. And then we gradually were adding, we added kaftans and dresses and kurtas, and it really grew pretty organically. Veronica, do you want to chime in?
Well, yeah, just I guess I'm going to say a little bit about what block printing actually is. So
yeah.
I'm wearing, you can see what I'm wearing. So these textiles, right? They, you know, if you look at a textile, you see that it's like a continuous pattern. Block printing is actually done all by hand. So you know, in India, it's pretty much started, wow, I mean, like 600 years ago, and the Brits, the colonial Brits, really loved it. It then infiltrated Europe via the spice trade, and you can see it start like it's documented in a bunch of European like everything, you know, just like manuals and about how this infiltration of color and soft cotton started entering Europe in the Middle Ages, where they had very dark and gray, itchy, you know, you can imagine. And so it's a very, you know, long tradition. It's done by wooden blocks by hand. It's like a guild, like in the Middle Ages, so it's passed down. There's families that do the printing, there's families that do the woods, there's family that do the dyeing. So it is a very heritage tradition, and built into our brand is this ethos of cultural preservation of the artisan sector of the economy, which after agriculture is the second largest employer in the developing world. And for women, it is the most like the most direct route to economic self-sufficiency is this artisan craft sector. So I think I went off tangent, but that's what it is. That's what we're talking about.
No, that's a great tangent. I think it's so, one of the things that I love about the way that you all have built this business is that it has been considered from every angle and from every relationship. And I think that we so rarely get to hear this, like the story about why all of these different people and places and parts of it matter. And I've just been really personally inspired by learning from you guys, just by witnessing the business grow, all of the different, like sourcing the fabric and where does the art come from and who puts the art on the thing and all of that. So I think it's amazing to consider how much goes into the things that we put in our body.
Yes, and if I can share, I'll share my screen with y'all really quick, because I have a photo of our printer that we work with in India, Vasu. Veronica, did you just giggle? Vasu, yeah. And he is actually block printing our moon phases fabric. So I will just share that really quick right now. And I think I'm sharing my screen. Let's see.
Yeah,
you are. All right, there we go. So that is Vasu. He is amazing. When we're there working in India, we are very, like I mentioned, like coming from a creative background. So we make a lot of changes and we like to experiment. And it's kind of interesting because that's not necessarily how they work. They're very methodical. So it's an interesting dynamic when we're there working with them, but it's an amazing process, as Veronica mentioned, because it is literally the teak wood blocks that they use to print the whole meters of fabric is such a painstakingly slow process that when we go to when we visited the studio and we're there for days long, like every day, and we don't even see all the fabric production done. Like that's how long it takes. Like this one strip of fabric, it's about 5 meters, just to give a little scope of measurement, and that can take hours. That can be an hours long process. And then once it's printed, there's the drying and then everything that has to happen after that. So just to give a little.
And so what Jonnyka was saying, just to go off on, you know, she's really brilliantly emphasizing the slowness of the process. And so that is the complete antithesis of what is currently dominating the garment and the textile industry, which is fast fashion. So fast fashion is basically built on the exploitation of workers. It is, you know, dependent on the addiction that consumers have to something new. The fashion cycle used to be 2 cycles, you know, fall and then summer or spring, and, you know, 2 cycles. Zara, to give you an idea, has 52 cycles of fashion. They can see something and in 2 weeks have it done, printed, copied, and distributed because they have a horizontal system of distribution. And, you know, that comes at a completely insane cost to workers. 80% of the workers that work in the garments and textile industries in the developing world are women of color. So, you know, they're the ones that bear the brunt of everything. And the recent problems with COVID is something called the cancellation culture, where I think since COVID started, $40 billion of garments have been canceled by major international companies. And what they do is the brunt of it goes to the workers and to the domestic small businesses in Bangladesh that have, you know, worked to have like factories that have safe conditions. And this is after, you know, a lot of other tragedies that have happened where conditions have not been met. So like you said, Martha, it is such a, like, clothing and textiles. I mean, there's so much more to fashion than what we think, you know, and that's something that interests us a lot and that we care about greatly.
Well, and I think in so many ways we have been conditioned, or the economy has conditioned us to consume, because with the consumption we don't have to feel the things that we don't have to feel, and sometimes acknowledge the things that we don't want to acknowledge. But the cost to that spiritually, and the cost to that in terms of our environment and what it does to the humans, is something that we can't afford anymore. And so I also just imagine the cancellation that you're talking about, like the resources, the environmental impact of something like that.
No, it's insane. So I saw that question. So let's just take cotton. I mean, take cotton as a, you know, as a thing. So cotton basically, you know, is, you know, most textiles are dependent on cotton, not the ones that are like polyester, acrylic, which is just another, like, you know, which is plastic, and we all know that in the environment. But, you know, cotton is steeped in colonialism, slavery, imperialism. I mean, it was really the birth of the Industrial Revolution is through cotton, and Indian textiles had a lot to do with it. So like you said, these $40 billion of orders that are sitting there done also were dyed, and the cotton was harvested. And, you know, it's just, you know, it's ridiculous, ridiculous. Like I know, for instance, the jean industry, interesting enough, because of COVID, has taken a huge hit because nobody wants to wear tight jeans anymore. And jeans,
my pants are exploding. Nobody wants jeans.
No, nobody wants the COVID-15 jeans.
Right.
And, you know, that is an industry because of like indigo and the dyeing and the, you know, and the runoff from the dyeing and you know, which has a lot of environmental. And if we link, I'm going to get the name for you to link. There are so many incredible sustainable fashion advocates that I've been, because of Black Lives Matter, have been educating myself even more into so many incredible researchers that are doing so much work with environmentalism, land, and fashion. There's this one woman, I know her main company is called Sustainable Brooklyn, but I'm going to find her name and show you guys. And for whoever has the question, she has a YouTube, like a lecture on environmentalism, land, and sustainability that is unbelievable, like jaw dropping.
Awesome.
So
And on an environmental note too, we only produce fabrics for the items that we're going to produce. So it's not like we're making a huge inventory of meters and meters of fabric and then not using it. It's like I actually IG storied one of our very first line sheets, which was actually hand drawn by the block print studio owner in India. And what he was doing was for every item, dress, kurta, kaftan, he was putting exactly how much fabric would be needed for each item. So the wild thing about that sheet, I wish I had it, like right here. The wild thing about that sheet is that some of them were like 1.7 meters. It was that exact. So as not to create any excess, like to use everything. And we also actually use a lot of the excess fabrics like in our braided necklaces and belts and our tassel
and
mallets.
speaking of waste, that is, oh, by the way, I
environmental.
found, so anyone who's listening, her name is Dominique Drakeford, to follow on Instagram.
Yeah. She is great.
She's amazing. Dominique Drakeford. I'll think of other people. Anyway, she's great. Speaking of waste, so one of the practices of not even fast fashion, because fast fashion we know is wasteful, but you would think that the luxury sector, because everything's so overpriced, is so special. Well, they have a practice which Burberry's got completely busted on this year, where they take excess inventory and they burn it.
They burn it?
They burn it. They burn it because they don't want to put it on sale because they think it diminishes the brand, perceived brand. So yeah, I mean, so and just let's go there. How about that for environmental waste? You've gone through all the the waste of shipping, making, and then you burn it. It's crazy.
Light it on fire. Wow.
Yeah, and one thing about the awareness though is that they were seriously called out along with another like many other companies. I can't remember, but that was maybe like a few months ago.
Yeah.
I think that was pre-COVID even, but they got really called out on that. And just for reference, I'm gonna like flash the sheet that I'm talking about. So it's literally this. No, it's like no tech, right? I mean, he literally drew it out, and a lot of them are like 1.5, 2.7. So that's something that we were very aware of, even though we were new to the block print process. We were very aware that it was that exacting so as not to waste. And that's been like a really interesting process to work with.
So, and I know that there are some entrepreneurs watching, and I want to talk about what I feel like in sisterhood with the two of you and Steph, who is our friend who started Farmhouse Delivery. But I think to build businesses like this with intention and slowness, and be really conscientious of how things are made, where things are sourced, all of that, is by necessity. It is not the story that we're told it's not the success story that we're told in business magazines and in the New York Times business section or whatever it is that defines, that success. It is like, you don't make money for a long time. It's super hard. You grow super slow. And I would love to just talk to you two from a personal perspective about what the emotional, like, what does that feel like emotionally for you?
Well, like you said, I mean, truly, and it's what y'all do is grassroots, right? Yeah. Which is what Stephanie does, growing. By the way, I've been friends with Stephanie since I was 10 years old, Martha. 10.
That's now, right?
Anyway, but I think you're right. Not at all. I mean, I remember Jonnyka has a really good friend who is a retail, like he really is someone who has a company. It's RTH, at RTH, everyone. It's one of the most beautiful, aesthetically artistic apparel, whatever, retail companies.
Amazing,
And
yes.
Jonnyka was friends with him well, I'll let you tell, but she was like, he didn't have a business plan. I mean, we didn't have a business plan. We literally, I went to India first. I went to a yoga retreat and I went to go see these textiles. I thought, wow, they all have these colonial British motifs. Like, how boring. Why don't we? And we were also both yoga teachers. So that's where a lot of the intention came from. And I thought, and that was really the idea. It wasn't like I did a market study, like, hey, people need more shit to wear. No, I was like, I personally want textiles that have a little bit more meaning and intention, like, and maybe, you know, things, symbols that mean something, since they are made in India. And in India, like in the rest of the developing world, textiles have a sacred quality. They're used in ritual. They are, you know, they're mended, and that's part of the sustainability movement as well. Like this idea of taking care, mending, recycling, composting, etc. Jonnyka, go ahead.
But wait, Martha, going back to your question, you talked about the emotional. Yeah, it truly is like a labor of love. And it has been from the start. And, you know, to be real, it definitely has, we've had our ups and downs. This was not something, as I was writing about this, thinking about this talk, this was not something that there was like a guidebook to, you know, creating a successful, profitable, ethical brand. There's not necessarily like the same kind of guidebook as like I worked for in the denim, speaking of denim, in the denim industry for 10 years. Super large Fortune 500 company, super profitable. And there was a process, there was a procedure. You worked on seasons, you did these certain things to get this outcome. Like you would go do magic. Veronica experienced magic too in her past lives, her past company. You go to magic in Las Vegas, this huge, like trade show, market, and you get the orders, you put it into production, you have the money. It's like, you know, it was just like a machine, right? And with our company, you know, there are other ethical brands out there, other even block print companies out there, but there's just no exact road to take to get XYZ. So we've had to, in many times, like think on our feet, re-strategize, make a new collection, like on the spot, fix things. We don't want to waste anything, so we've had to even alter and fix a lot of things. We are actually, even on this new collection, just full disclosure, we're actually like working on a few pieces, thinking like maybe we need to like create a smaller size in this particular thing, or, you know, we're always taking notes. It's like, it's always, Veronica, is that cheeky?
Yeah, and that's another thing what Jonnyka was saying, like, and I think, again, it's a little bit of what you guys do, Martha, is the idea of community. So without community, I think a small entrepreneur, especially if you're, whatever you're doing, you know, I think that is really key. I mean, within our community, you know, for us, like, you know, our models, our friends, you know, we don't hire anyone. The seamstress is this local woman in Austin. Every single part, I can say, of what we do, we know everybody personally. So there's no outsourcing. And outsourcing is a big problem within fast fashion again. I mean, that is how a lot of this crisis came about, is because there is no accountability. So a lot of these big companies, because they want to appear transparent and sustainable, because that is the buzzword, they will say, oh yes, you know, we source our stuff here. But a lot of what they manufacture is done through middlemen and through a separate party. So there is actually no control.
Right.
And that's part of that supply chain, is why they were able to just cancel these orders and leave all these people high and dry. So yeah, that's another part of a small business, I think, that is key for entrepreneurship, especially if you're starting out, if you're bootstrapping, you don't have a big funder, in our case, no funder.
Yeah.
You know, it really is community.
Yeah. And to be totally honest, when we started Waking Giants, we thought that we would go, you know, find a investor partner, and it didn't, ultimately, it wasn't the right thing for us. And it meant slower growth, and it meant that we have more control over like what we offer and when. But I'm really resonating with what you all are saying in terms of the relationship piece, because like when we build our boxes, or even when we put on our workshops, I'm getting to work with people that I love, like people that I admire, people that I look up to, people that it is so much about the relationships. That the definition of success, I think, can and should be stretched to include the full picture.
Yeah.
You know, financial success has to be part of these things, or they don't last.
Right.
But I think that maybe we should write a book, y'all.
Yeah.
Really?
No, and I think I just had this
Really?
image. It's true. It's more like a circular,
Yes.
you know, economic model than a very
That's what I wrote.
Jonnyka,
Oh, that is amazing.
it.
Wait, Veronica, Martha and I were talking about that before you got on
Oh, really?
the
And
call.
when I was
Yeah.
having my schizo.
Like,
issue.
that's what I wrote in my notes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I
Circular
wanted,
economic stability.
that I was thinking about when Jonnyka was saying something about, I mean, I know this partly pertains to cancel culture, but that's a negative thing. But one wonderful thing about all these communications is really this, and I think somebody asked a question about how do you, like for fast fashion, how do you call them out? Or
Call
how
it
do you,
out, yeah.
Yeah, well, right now there is a movement called #PayUp. And there is, all on our stories, I'm gonna write all these people, but there's someone called Elizabeth Klein, who's a journalist. There's a couple of journalists. And this movement has been incredible as far as like, they really shifted into high gear when COVID started to find through like payments and everything, what companies, what large, like Gap was on it, Urban Outfitters was on it, all these companies that had canceled the orders.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have a running tab. And so that is an excellent resource. So if you start following a lot of these activists, you know, you can see and, you know, maybe think twice about, I mean, I know my kids love Urban Outfitters, but boy, did they get in trouble with Anthropologie.
Doesn't.
Better too, boy. I mean, so, you know, there's all these incredible resources to see what these companies and hold them accountable. Like, really? You know, you post a black square, like, what's your policy?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Beyond performance.
Right,
Yeah,
beyond performance. Yeah, like diving deep.
No, I heard that term, performative allyship. I love it.
Yes,
Sorry,
yes.
I'm not, loved it. Anyway, go ahead, John.
Yeah, performative allyship for sure. And also like, this is a little like bigger picture also, but like environmental intersectionalism.
Yes.
is something that keeps popping up on our radar. And kind of the interesting thing in all of this is that when we started, there was not really like, and this was just 5 years ago, right? There was not really like these movements happening, like these call outs, and it was happening in food. Like Veronica and I always talked about this, Martha, with Stephanie.
Yeah.
All the time, that the food like consciousness was happening, but not the it wasn't maybe moving into other things, right? So there was like the slow food movement, the eat local, more like, you know, home cooking, which Martha, right, that was your like catalyst, right?
Yeah.
And all of that now does feel like it's starting to shift into where Veronica and I have been working in this fashion accessories production sector.
Jonnyka, will you talk a little bit about the concept of the circular economic stability? I think that's,
yes.
I want to learn more.
Yeah, definitely. So number one, we do not like bargain down the prices that we've established with our artisan partners in India or in Ecuador. And there's a lot to that. You know, we actually have relationships with these people, so we like know them, and that respect, like respecting their work, their value, like their businesses, has always been something that's very, very important to us. And we've done that from the start, even when we were literally purchasing these things ourselves, like with our own money. We were still just like, it's always going to be fair. And the collections are like, our approach to making the collections is we design everything. Martha, you mentioned like who does the artwork.
Oh yeah, the art. It's behind you.
So it's totally like a collaboration between Veronica and I, and we have these like, you know, kind of design brainstorms.
Fun.
And
I want to be a fly on the wall at one of those.
Yeah. and sometimes they're just like on the fly. Sometimes, you know, we schedule time to do them. But one thing that's always been important with that is that the symbols and the meaning of the symbols really matter to us. That's just a design note. It's not really the economics of this, but anyway, so these artisans that we work with, they're like true collaborators. We don't micromanage them. It's not like the old paradigm of like, you are working for us, like, no, it's, we respect their art form because number one, we've been in creation mode ourselves. Like I'm a painter, Veronica does all kinds of creative work. So there's like an added respect just for that art form. And that's something really important to us too. And it is important to us that we can consistently keep placing these orders and keep their businesses going as well as ours. And that's how we see, that's how we can contribute to like this circular economy where if we thrive, they thrive. You know, if they thrive, you know, it's all cyclical, right? And mutually beneficial. Like we're enmeshed. Like VP, like when we couldn't get a hold of Cheryl, like we were every day.
Yeah. And also what you were saying, so that circular as opposed to this very vertical, linear, you know, like hyper-capitalist approach, a lot of the way they work, these large companies, you know, I'm talking H&M, Zara, Gap, all these guys, their business model is to squeeze, you know, as we know, right? But literally, so in like for these companies, and a lot of most of the manufacturing is happening in the developing world. So they are literally, you know, I read this quote, which is that this unilateral decision by these companies to cancel these billions of orders is the single largest act of theft in the modern apparel industry. So it's theft. So it's a transfer of wealth out of apparel countries, Bangladesh, Cambodia, Vietnam, India, into, you know, these Western companies.
Right.
Which is such an incredibly interesting colonial like way of seeing it. I mean, we're right back to where we were 500, you know what I mean? It hasn't changed. If you do that model, there's no difference from the colonial model of production.
That's right.
And sadly, that is not only global, right? That is not only international, that happens here. Where I worked in LA, when I was in the apparel industry, there were, you know, sweatshops downtown.
Oh yeah, LA for sure.
It is domestic as well. Yeah. And really a problem. And really, like, as Veronica's saying, like not really talked about. Yeah. Like not at all. It's starting to come out. Thank God, but yeah.
Well, and that's actually part of which I know, Martha, you mentioned the whole like decolonizing movement. For instance, and I think that what was happening I'm going to be completely honest right now, in sustainable fashion, which is where
girl.
Yeah. I mean, I actually was getting, before all this started, like a bit bored. Like I had sat on so many panels and stuff, and, you know, it's the same conversation. Yes. And we all know it's a checklist. Yeah. Buy vintage, buy less, like that. And a lot of like the, you know, influencers and a lot of the rhetoric and the narrative, it just really was a bit like superficial. It wasn't like meaty enough. It wasn't digging into these issues of human rights abuses, slavery,
Yeah.
colonialism, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I really think with COVID and with the Black Lives Matter movement, it's just been blown up, and it's amazing. And it's finally where it needs to be, because those are the issues that need to be raised, not the fact that like I'm buying too many clothes. You know, who cares?
Right.
Stop.
And you have a handle on Instagram called Decolonizing Fashion. Is that correct?
Sustainability. Yeah, I just started because
Sustainability.
Yeah,
Okay.
and really, you know, I had studied 20 years ago, because I'm so old, or more, something called post-colonial criticism. And that, it's so, you know, and it was like so weird back then, because it was started by a group of Indian scholars. It was really to pick apart a lot of, you know, like philosophy, history, and everything, to see it through the veil of colonialism. And now with this whole movement, I mean, I don't know if you guys follow, there's someone called, the decolonizing therapy. She is brilliant. Oh, by the way, she's doing a talk tonight at 6. So I think she was the one, and I kept seeing this, and I was like, oh my God, that's it. And so for me personally, this whole decolonizing sustainability is something that like I am, like, as a former academic, so fascinated with and so excited to share. And really that platform for me, is me just digging in. And
I love that you're doing that. I really do. I think that it's, I mean, we all have so much to learn as it relates to the way that all of these things come together. And I hear so much resonance in my experience in the food industry with the fashion industry. But, you know, there's talking about, in particular, circular economic stability, but we don't pay the full cost for food in most cases, because we have to factor in the cost to the environment and the cost to our physical health, and the cost to our humanity in the way that certain foods are grown and produced. And I think that the same is true with so many industries, fashion included, certainly, that to pay the full cost of it means buying something from the Onikas, then you've paid fairly for the material, you've paid fairly for the art, you've paid fairly for the production, and you can feel good about wearing the full cost of what it is. And it's your mindset is fundamentally an abundance mindset, because and I think that is where I would love to see the new economy go, if it can, but like where there is enough for everyone, there's more than enough for everyone. And if we do well and treat others well and pay others fairly for what they contribute, then we don't have to live in this scarcity model where we narrow and squeeze and diminish our fellow humans to get something.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
And I think and I'm back to cotton because I'm sort of obsessed, but you know, and again, full transparency. I mean, if we had that deep pocket investor, you know, my dream would be like, because to go back to India, I mean, I know our supplier, you know, he really sources, and you can feel it. I mean, this is not.
He's very careful. Yes.
Yeah. But, you know, cotton is, as a crop in India, is a devastating crop. I mean, first of all, like all the like large, you know, the pesticides for mass, and forget what's happening in China. I don't want to talk about that because that's slavery, but in India, so the cotton industry, I lost my train of thought. Cotton. Yes.
Tracking the production, the sourcing, the
sourcing. Oh, and this was really sad. So because of the mass farming of cotton in India, they, you know, obviously Monsanto and all these firms wanted them to use a certain pesticide. This has been happening in the past like 10 years. And of course, as we know, all those nasty ass chemicals, what they do is they deplete the soil. There was a spike in the number of rural suicides of these farmers because they were, and I mean, stuff like that. That's what you mean. Like that human capital, like, what is that? Like that should never happen. And we should all be more aware and more accountable. And the circular economy needs to include everyone. Including that farmer, you know, just going back to the seed, really, of the cotton.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's even why we're talking about that phrase right now, is that is coming into consciousness, and like collective consciousness, right? Where it's like, yeah, where is the fabric for that, you know, dress coming from? Who printed that? And actually, Veronica and I always talk about people like our IG audience, our Instagram audience, like they really like respond to seeing like posts about our printers, information about like how the designs are made, and getting that like peek into like the back end of the process. Whereas before, I think it was kind of like, it was okay that everything was just happening in shadow, right? And not really like in the light. And people weren't saying, like the companies that I worked for, they weren't saying, here's our head of production, and here's who's actually making your clothes, like who makes my clothes, right? And yeah, that was just not even happening at all. I mean, I worked in the industry, it was like 15 years ago, but it's amazing like where we are now compared to back then.
Yeah. I want to open it up for questions. So you guys bring the questions if you have them. Come on, take yourself off mute, or type it in the box or whatever. But we can keep talking for a long time.
Yes. Yes, there is so much, there are so many aspects of this. Yeah. And kind of going on what we were just saying, and a little bit back to Martha, what you're talking about, like the psychology of it, like the emotional impact, even of like Veronica's and mine, like, you know, like emotional state of mind, having to like, for years, like do this almost like a labor of love. We are now, I was reflecting on, you know, current pandemic and where we are now and how we're thinking about the business. And it's almost like the extreme nature of the current pandemic has almost like put not everyone, but almost everyone kind of in our place. You know, like Veronica and I have always pivoted, and we've always been like, how do we evolve, and how do we become more transparent, and all of that. So it's a little bit interesting. So it's almost like the outside world is like we're a little closer, like we bridged a gap or something.
I think that it has laid bare to a no longer deniable degree how rooted our systems are in oppression and violence, and that to choose something different means that we have to actually rebuild systems. What we aren't talking about fixing anything, because there's nothing broken. The systems are generating what they were intended to generate. And so to restructure systems means something very different than to fix systems. Okay, Carmen, we've got, Jess has a question. What are some ways to see through the faux transparency? I think you guys answered this, or any company, as in, what are the right questions to ask? Or
well, there's, I mean, you know, now I mentioned the hashtag PayUp. The precursor to that is hashtag Who Made My Clothes. And it's under the umbrella of the Fashion Rev movement. That was started back in 2013 in Dhaka, Bangladesh. There was a fire, and it was just the last of many fires because the conditions in the garment factories were so poor that the entire building collapsed. And so you had over 2,500 people injured, mainly women. I said 80% of the workers are women. Over 1,132 people, I might be off, died. That spurred an entire movement called Who Made My Clothes, which again began in 2013. Every April, there's an entire month of Fashion Rev events where there's awareness. It's global movement. Every country is part of this movement. And so yeah, that's one way. Again, like you know, Fashion Rev, Who Made My Clothes, Elizabeth Klein, PayUp. There's anything with slow fashion. I mean, you'll see on Instagram all these like resources to be able to track. And you know, you can start telling like when they greenwash. You know, like if H&M is telling you that they're super committed to, you know, sustainability, environmentalism, and you see that they're still producing 52 collections a year, it's bullshit. You know,
and
it's really,
price tag really matters. Like,
yeah,
if a dress is $5.99.
it's impossible.
Yeah.
And also just a note on Fashion Rev, because Martha, you mentioned like a lot of entrepreneurs on here. That was started by one woman, and she actually had the idea after the Rana Plaza. Wait, am I saying that? Rana Plaza.
Yeah,
Rana Plaza. After that building collapse, which happened because there was no accountability, like no one cared about those workers to even check the building structural, like making sure the building was sound structurally. But that was started by one woman, and she got the idea while she was in her bathtub and thinking about that horrible tragedy. And Veronica, her name is Carrie.
Well, there's two. Yeah, well, no, she's the main.
Yeah, there's two.
Ursula de Castro is one of them, Italian, but we'll put them on there. And she actually, the other woman, which I can't remember her name, but I will, she had actually also, funny enough, funded a company in Ecuador, where I'm from, doing what I used to do, which is working with hat makers in Ecuador. So she had that artisan thing from back in the day when it wasn't even a name for sustainability. Yeah. So she already had that, and then but that just goes to show you how that grassroots activism, I mean, now Fashion Rev it's huge, and it really was starting, Carrie Summers.
Carrie Summers, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, Carmen, here we go. This requires education or re-education on how we exist and consume products as humans. This also makes me think about how we present ourselves through social media. Any thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. Good. Thank you for bringing that up, Carmen, because, you know, we were talking about before all this accountability, before these people were being called out, you know, really brands were luxury. That's marketing. That's a brand. It's the surface thing, which, you know, presents normally a, you know, blonde, skinny, beautiful woman in a gorgeous location, aspirational, you know, and I think that that's also being dismantled. Finally, thank God, you know, because that's the bill of goods that we were sold, you know, and I think it does dig into the scarcity mindset that Martha was talking about. You know, who is not going to feel inferior if you're, you know, if what you're aspiring to are these impossible standards of beauty that are, you know, completely, you know, built on, I don't even know, like everything, imperialist, colonials, you name it, and just so narrow in focus. And fashion was definitely, you know, guilty of that big time, you know, still is in many regards.
Yeah, and the social media, that note on social media, you know, that just has, I think, everything that Veronica is talking about, social media channels have just, you know, exponentially impacted I want to say like self-esteem and self-concept, because I come from like a psychological, clinical psych background as well. You know, that's now something that's being actively talked about on social, like, you know, decreasing your time on looking at people's feeds, because that can lead to, you know, that feeling of like lack and inferiority. And, you know, there's a lot of like psychological damage that can happen, a lot of impact, right? Shame. You know, why isn't my life looking like that? But it's all a presentation, right? So it's all,
and, you know, full disclosure and honesty, the thing is, you know, we're also like, you know, hustling schmatas, as they say in the trade. You know, we're actually trying to like have our goods enter the greater economy. So it's interesting for brands to like, you know, and for a while, even when we, you know, a couple of years ago, I remember we were like, okay, you know, because you kind of follow along as like, you know, you have to like present it a certain way. You need to like show it. And then I was like, well, that's not really the whole picture. And that's where Jonnyka said, like, now our pivot, because we didn't have any new merchandise coming. We didn't know what was going on in India. I mean, we had no idea. So we started doing more this type thing, like, you know, IG lives and like our art, you know, we started doing much more digging in with our watercolors and our artwork. And I'm thankful of that, because it does present a more complete picture than the very superficial, very boring social media representation of fashion, which is, you know, deeply flawed.
And pretty narrow.
Yeah. And just self-critique, you know, we, like Veronica said, we definitely were doing that because we thought that's what you were, you know, supposed to do, like that presentation. We had professional photographers and they were friends, thankfully, of Veronica's. So we got, like reduced rates. But for example, and Veronica, I'm just going to give you super shout out. Veronica just did, like she photographed, she was a photographer for our most recent photo shoot for our new collection.
Awesome.
And I think they're like the best. I mean, I could rave on for a while about this, but I think they're the best photographs that we've had. And I think it's because of that eye, it's just a different eye, right? When you like intimately know the product, the people, it's not that glossy veneer of like social media or that, it's not aspirational, but that pressure to present yourself a certain way. Like you can just be more real. And I'm happy because I think we're like really shifting even more into that.
Yeah.
Just with like what Veronica and I are talking about.
I'm going to geek out for a second, the academic again, but in art history, what really changed the course of art history when feminist art historians started studying the male gaze. And I think that's what Jonnyka is talking about. A lot of these big brands, there's entire departments, and Jonnyka knows more of this, photography, branding, visuals, models,
whole teams. Yeah.
How can we get the look that we want? We need her, we need like the blonde California girl. And I think that gaze, it's a separation between the image, it's just adding this and it creates these blind spots in this mindset of, like, oh, I want that because somebody else is doing the thinking for you. You're not feeling it or thinking it. You're just
right. And wait, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
and right before this talk, I was actually texting Veronica because I was looking at the photos and I said, our photographers, like when we hire, and like an external, a professional photographer, they're editing before they even shoot. Like I'm always interested in the, like the motivation, right? Like what's behind each, but they're editing before they shoot. So it's almost not even capturing the moment. Like they're constructing, like what Veronica was saying to male gaze, they're constructing the moment, right? Instead of just like that impulsive instinctual capture. And VP, I think that's what you like totally did in that photo shoot.
Wow, thank you. Well, I can't wait to show you. Martha will have to say.
Yeah, wait till y'all see it. Yeah, the images are really, really great.
Linda has a question, I think.
Yeah, I have a question.
Hi, Linda.
Linda, hello.
So great to be here with you guys.
Oh my gosh, we love seeing you.
I'm a big fan. I should have worn one of my dresses, but I just didn't think fast enough. So I am on board with everything you are saying, and I really believe that social media has amped up consumerism considerably, and I see that in my 24-year-old daughter, like that ability to just like click, shop now, buy. Though I'm sitting here conflicted, and I just want to, I'd love you to speak to this kind of internal conflict I feel about how, while I so believe and love slow fashion, the price point is not accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
So it feels like there's two issues here. It's like that consumerism that is just amped up and focused on people who, are making fast choices or, can't afford to spend the extra money on something that is sustainable and, and created with so much love like you do. So yeah.
I mean, I think you're completely right. And in fact, here's one problem, and this is just a structural problem within the apparel industry. A lot of brands, in order to succeed and grow or even to survive, they have to wholesale, right? You have to sell to stores. Those stores need to mark it up. So you're taking something, you're taking something that like, if it was sold direct to consumer, which is where we are hoping to go, like we have actually been able to lower our prices on a lot of stuff. And we try to, as soon as we can, like really offer, like sales to our friends and stuff. But the markup, because of this wholesale situation, is high. So that is a problem. And I think the more direct to consumer, so the more that people invest in brands that they love and buy directly from them, that is going to give those people producing the stuff the ability to bring the price down. because oftentimes that price is dictated by a resale, by a store. Does that kind of make sense?
It makes total sense to me. It happens that in food too, like the goods that I would sell, I would have to make a certain profit on food. I started a vegetarian burger company years ago. So this is from that experience, but I would make my product for a certain amount and I would have to sell it to the distributor with my margin built in. And then that distributor goes and sells it to the grocery store plus 10%. And then the grocery store sells it plus 42% margin, not markup. That's a higher markup than it is a margin. So what you see is that a thing that costs this to create costs exponentially more to land in a conventional shelf. And there are environmental implications in all of that too, in terms of how it transports and everything else. But I think one of the things that we could reimagine in a new economy is paying people more, right? People need to be making more money for the work that they do. So we have a minimum wage that is 7.25 still is criminal.
Unbelievable, actually.
And there's room to do it if we start to look at how goods get around. And if we really look at moving goods sustainably, they will often start expensive because you have to cover your cost on the expense. But as your market grows, you can start to, like Veronica said, start to lower the cost and give that cost back to the customer. And so the burden of building these new and sustainable businesses or supporting them early is often the people that already have the means to do so. And so such that they can make those investments and believe in those companies. And then the brands, instead of holding all of the margin, can then share that in a better cost for the other people involved. Then that's where it really gets interesting. Digital delivery of stuff is a lot easier. Like we are able to offer our programming for, if you can afford it, pay this. If you can't afford it, don't pay anything. Just come, take the class, do whatever. Because that I think is, I mean, there's a lot of space between that idea at scale and where we are now, but there's something in there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cost being hoarded.
Yeah. And I think that it's not, oh no, sorry, Linda, go ahead.
So as a consumer and having contact with a lot of people, and, I can, promote my preferences on, Instagram or put up, and promote sustainable fashion. But are there ways that I can, like, just at ground level, like say I have a 24-year-old daughter that like loves clothes and, I can try to steer her choices, but is there, like, what do you suggest to do for the everyday consumer who's just saying, well, that's really cool, let me grab that? Are there brands, are there wholesale, are there places that I can lead people where they can still, like, she can still buy her $20 shirt, but I can feel better about where it's coming from.
I mean, my teenagers who are like, they should be, I mean, I've got 13 and 17, they are so into thrifting. I mean, I don't know if it's in Miami, which is a miracle because it's such a, but that is one thing, not only thrifting from like Goodwill or thrift shops, but like these kids they're on it all the time. Depop, all these secondhand, and they're selling $20 t-shirts, like, and it's really cool. They really,
Miami is baller.
Yeah, no, so I do think I see in my kids, and I see that this generation is definitely into secondhand. I mean, when we were growing up, it was like, like the edgy teens. Now
it's cool. Yeah, that was cool. Yeah.
All around. And listen, inevitably, sometimes you are probably, going to go and buy a t-shirt from let's be honest, like you do that. But I think it's just, as far as like the consumer, so maybe I'm invested in this brand and I love it. Maybe I'm going to buy one piece from that brand at full price, and then there's other stuff and I'm going to wait for it to go on sale. And then if I need a t-shirt, I'm not going to buy 20 t-shirts, but maybe I'll buy one t-shirt from like a J. Crew or someone like that. So I think it's just a balance. I think it's just getting them off of this like quick buy of everything. Like, if I don't know if you guys noticed, but there used to be all these young, because my kids are so young, these little Instagram YouTubers, and they would do this thing called the haul, where they would go to H&M or Forever 21, and they'd bring these bags, and they'd be like, here's my haul, here's my $2, and they would start, you know, I think I don't see that anymore. And thank God. I really, that's a quick 2-year shift that I see of that not happening anymore. So I don't know if that answered your question, Linda, but.
And I see how, you know, I completely see the cycle of how in supporting you, I am supporting the greater good and the way that you are, you know, educating the world in what you're doing and the impact that you have. And so by supporting you, I'm actually supporting that.
By supporting
that whole like philosophy,
supporting the collective. Yeah.
Full disclosure, Jonnyka and I do not draw a salary yet. So
neither do I.
Yes, you're actually not.
No, I'm gonna feed you.
Yes, but it keeps our enterprise going. Like it keeps our like network going with the artisan partners, with product development, with shipping, with like graphic design. You know, we have a lot of partners that we work with as well that provide services to keep the building going, to keep the business going. And just
on forums like this, like it gets you,
yes,
know, gets you out speaking. I love that you're out speaking about.
Oh, thank you. Like, like creating this community and Onika's community. And also I'm going to paraphrase Vivian Westwood, and I just want to clarify, she is the one that actually first said, and this is paraphrasing because I think she said it a little differently, but the buy less, choose wisely. A lot of people use that, and that was actually something that she said like many years ago, but it is coming into forefront. I see a lot of people using that with no citation, but that was, but that is a whole like lifestyle approach. Mm-hmm. Like you choose things you love, like Veronica was talking about fashion revolution, and it's like loved clothes last. Mm-hmm. You know, you buy quality, you buy pieces that you love. It's not disposable fashion. It's like, it can have meaning to you, or, you know, you can be supporting, Linda, like you say, like these whole other collectives.
I, for teenagers or 24-year-olds, one thing that I would think about is that everything has a story. There's just a story attached to everything that you bring in your home, whether you put your story on it or whether you're attentive to the story that's sewn into it or grown into it. I think that when young people get curious about the stories of things and telling that, and that is a real benefit of social media, I think that is where a lot of shift can happen. Y'all, an hour goes fast.
Wow, we're actually over time. Oh my gosh, and I just want to shout out really quick to Carmen's last comment.
I do too. I was gonna.
Yeah, because that's like what you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, really related to what you were saying.
So Carmen says, is your material more of an art form? My answer is yes. Do we really understand the role of the artist and the cost of their creativity?
That's hard, man. That's a whole nother, that's our next one.
Let's do that one next.
We want to invite maybe about that on our little IG.
I was talking to my therapist about that, and talking about how a lot of times artists and activists operate outside of the capitalist system, which makes it really difficult to value the contribution.
No, 100%. And
so true. Yeah.
Brilliant friend called Amy Whitaker, who is an artist and an economist and brilliant. She has a book called Art Thinking. For anyone that's interested in the subject of creativity, art, and business and the intersections, you'll be blown away.
I'm writing it down.
One takeaway from that book is that she talks about something called the whole story or whole life. And I think when people live creatively, and it's not just artists, I mean, you know, I see your wall, Martha, I see you. Like that, you know what I mean? Like it's people that have a creative way of, they do the way they cook, the way they live, the way they arrange their things. And what Amy's thing in this book was that sometimes that comes from your whole life experience. Like I can't brand direct your thing. You know, you don't study that really. It just comes from living authentically. I mean, that sounds so cheesy, but that really is it.
Not really the deal.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. And everybody go follow the Onikas on the social medias and check out their really exceptionally beautiful things that they make.
Martha,
Thank you.
thrifting in Miami is emotional. I just want to let you know. As someone who does it often,
love that.
anytime I go, I'm like, I need to hit up thrift stores in Miami. Like, not even thinking twice. So, yeah, must do bucket list. Thank you again, ladies, for all that you do, what you've done, what you're doing, the revolution you're creating and you're a part of. And guys, check out Waking Giants and the Onikas. Take care, guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye everyone.
Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.